Hi, I'm Denise Andrews. I'm the legislator for the 2nd Franklin District. I have 12 towns. I live in Orange, Mass. And I have 5 towns that have the pipeline proposed coming through it. All 5 of my towns are vehemently opposed to a pipeline for some very valid reasons, and I'm fully supportive of stopping the pipeline. First, when you look at people in our communities get to decide what is in these communities, whether we want nuclear power or we don't, whether we want pipeline in fossil fuels, and we don't. So people have gotten together, the activists, collected over 10,000 signatures, marched across the state, and continue to advocate in town halls, meetings in Boston and in Washington to get clear on what kind of energy policy they want and what kind of policy they want. And if you look at the energy policy that we want here, particularly in this beautiful part of Massachusetts, we want to accelerate the use of renewables. We want to accelerate conservation so that we have a sustainable future not just for this generation, but for the next generation. We believe we can do that. This pipeline proposes spending $4 billion.
Could you repeat that?
$4 billion.
Thank you.
For $4 billion, what could we build for green technology? What could we insulate in our homes? What could we create? A lot more than an infrastructure of a pipeline coming through pristine, environmentally protected land in northern Massachusetts, central Mass. So policy, we want to define. The people get to define that, not Kinder Morgan, not a multi-billion-dollar company interested in frack gas, not just for here, but for export. We don't need that. So people get to decide, we get to set the policy, and the last thing I think is very important, our promise. Generations before us promised us a good life here in this area and in this country. We have to continue that stewardship. Part of that stewardship is keeping our promise of protected open space. You've heard of Article 97, where in the Constitution of Massachusetts, we protect in perpetuity land for water quality. We are the water supply for Boston, and we have to maintain the water quality. We have to maintain open space for natural resources, endangered species, hunting, environment, etc. And we promise to do that. So in Article 97, the legislature has a responsibility to uphold that. So what can people do with their elected officials? One is continue to let us know what you want. Hold us accountable. Pin us down and ask us to pledge to protect Article 97 land so that when a vote comes to the Massachusetts House and Senate, we stop having that land move out for Kinder Morgan. The state has some power to prevent this, and it'll probably come down to a constitutional issue with a federal issue. We also have to reach out to our federal electeds to say at the federal level, again, what do we want for policy for energy, conservation, renewables, and then that people get to decide what's in their community. And as elected officials at the federal, state, and local level, let us know. Write letters, call us up, invite us to the marches, send us the material so that we can support and be your public servants.
How many you said people in 5 of your 10 towns?
12 towns.
12 towns will be impacted by the pipeline. Do you have any idea how many people that might be?
No, I would estimate in the 5 towns I have approximately 60. If you look across
60.
60.
60.
Yeah, and,
wow.
And if you look across the Commonwealth on the pipeline route, over several hundred.
1,600, I heard.
1,600.
Through the Commonwealth, yeah.
And, so land rights, protection, I watched the Smith Twins video on generational land handed down, the specialness of what was built and passed down by generation. And to have a multi-billion-dollar company think they can just come in and take that and not explain. We were at a meeting, they were asked the question, a gentleman said, I don't buy something or sell something unless I know the price. What are you going to give me for my land? Kinder Morgan says, we can't tell you. That is erroneous. Any business person or worth their salt could say, on average, this market is similar to other markets. Here's what you could expect for land value. A realtor, I bet in 20 minutes, could answer that question. So here we have this multi-billion-dollar company, my opinion, lacking integrity to answer very valid questions from our citizens, our landowners, to give them valid answers. What is this going to do? What is the depth of the pipe? How do we come in and prepare the land? How do we deal with it? That's all important questions after, though, Hattie, the question of do we need this supply? And when you look at the research that I've seen, no one has proven at all that we need this supply. And until that's proven, we should not be investing 1 cent of taxpayers' money to put this in.
I know I was at the Orange Town Hall the other night, and it was unanimous. Not one person voted for that pipeline. And I think there's 27, 28 towns now. Northfield just voted it in.
Yeah.
Resolutions to stop the pipeline. Ashfield, all different towns. But with Ashfield, Kinder Morgan, they tried to stop them from surveying on the streets even. Kinder Morgan said, we don't have to obey your laws.
Yeah.
So
they're aggressive, and
very aggressive,
and,
yeah.
The other promise is democracy. This country's built on of the people, by the people, not of the corporations for profit. That's not what we're about. And I think this is a defining moment once again in our history to say, what is it we want, the people, on energy policy. You've been active on closing our nuclear plants, and people say, well, we can't do these things. Well, we can. Japan has accelerated because they understand the risk now of nuclear power. They're getting off of it, and they will be still a very viable country. They'll figure it out. The United States, Massachusetts can do the same thing. We can figure it out. Conservation, renewables, there's a path forward.
Yeah, actually, this administration, the Patrick administration, I think has done a lot to bring green energy. The solar initiative is huge. Pocky lives in Northampton. They put in, through the Green Energy Project, 110 houses were solarized.
Yeah. And we just had some legislation to increase the solar caps for small solar. So how do we put incentives in that? We haven't even touched incentivizing small hydro, existing hydro, that can coexist with fish and natural habitat. Wind, we haven't even really begun that in Massachusetts. So when you look at what we can do with renewables, that is a much safer, more sustainable energy policy. That's really where we need to be focused.
Yeah. Your legislative session hasn't started again.
No, January. We finished in August 1st.
I see.
And the rally was the next to last day. Amazing turnout on the Boston Common.
And so you don't go into session until January?
No, we have informal sessions, so there's some legislation coming through that we're watching, some things on foreclosure and budget. But we will not get back in session till January 1st.
So now people are home and their constituents should be lobbying them.
Absolutely. Full court press, because Kinder Morgan had a full court press in Boston in the State House. I saw them in there every day talking to legislators. They're telling their story. It is imperative that every citizen that cares about this tells their story to their electeds, both local, state, and federal.
And how are our federals on this?
Elizabeth Warren, Senator Warren came out strong against it. Congressman McGovern, strong against it. McGovern, strong. So what we need to do is, keep them engaged, keep them apprised, make sure that we know the process, because Kinder Morgan's pretty quick. When I read some of the emails, they're looking to sidestep some of our processes on FERC.
I saw that.
And if we're not careful, those things can happen in an instant,
Yeah.
and sitting legislators won't even know that's happening. It shouldn't be that way,
Right.
but it does happen. So I think the collective work going on is important, making sure that someone is on point to touch base with each of the federal people at least a month frequency, and then the same at the state level.
Yeah. The pipeline obviously goes through the most rural part of Massachusetts, where there are the least voters per square mile and everything. And we need to get the word out to the legislators that live in the highly populated areas.
Correct.
And their constituents. So that's what's really critical here.
You're right,
to
Hetty. It's
keep
not
that
just
vote.
the towns of the
Yeah.
route. It's the whole Commonwealth on policy and energy policy.
Yeah. And I know that being on the walks and being in rallies and with you and everybody, people are really upset about this. They're just devastated.
Yeah. And Kinder Morgan's come in very cocky, matter of fact, and we were having a meeting with the 20 legislators where the pipeline comes through, and then Secretary Berwick and what's her name, Maeve from DCR.
Right.
And we said, how should we interpret Kinder Morgan's approach to Massachusetts? They act like it's a done deal.
Yeah.
And they said, well, they haven't met Massachusetts. Maybe that's true in other states, but we're Massachusetts. We had the Tea Party, we had the Shays Rebellion, you know, you ladies and others closed Vermont Yankee and have set policy. So it has to be everybody tuned in. Massachusetts is not an ordinary state. Massachusetts has a calling on environmental leadership, human rights leadership, having a vibrant democracy that's inclusive and cares for people, that's progressive. So I think, again, it's another opportunity for Massachusetts, everyone, to define who we want to be.
Yeah. So we need to spread the word. Thank you very much.
Anytime.
Yeah.